Bank holiday Monday, the 24th of May 2015. Levels Agency presents a night called Gap. Turn down for what? This is D1 Gemini Birthday Edition. This night will be held at Bertie's Wine Bar and Club, 12 to 14 Cameron Road, 7 Kings, Ilford, Essex, IG3 8LA, right opposite 7 Kings Station. Your music policy on the night will be bashment, R&B, Afro beats, club classics, house, garage, soca, and everything in between. Your DJs on the night will be Doghouse UK from naturalwivesradio.com, Young K from Levels Agency, Dimensions of House, Johnny Darko, and the birthday boy himself, D1, who will be a special birthday set. This night will be hosted by the one and only Marksman, alongside Dr. P. Entry is £5 before 11:30, more thereafter. All Geminis will gain free entry, proof of ID will be required. For more info, keep it locked to this station or contact 07985 686 599.
World Jam Global Radio, this is Clarity.
Well, I want to say a big good evening to all of our listeners right across the world. This is Kervin, Julien on the issues today on World Jam Global Radio. And today, my friends, we've got an absolutely excitingly shocking story to share with you. And we're going to be going live to Uganda to talk to Edward MPAGI. We're going to have my co-host, David ROMEI, who's coming to you live from Connecticut. And we're also going to be going across to London to the criminologist and activist of injustice, Mr. SATISH Seika himself. But in the meantime, I just want to say a big good evening to you all as we introduce our guests from all over the world. So, first of all, to my co-host and my champion activist, Mr. Dr. David ROMEI. How are you, sir? Hi, David.
Hello, Kervin. I'm glad to be with you again today from America.
Okay, that is Dr. David ROMEI coming live from Connecticut. And coming from you live from London is Satish Seika. Satish, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Kervin.
Okay, it's good to hear you too.
Hello, Satish.
Okay, and we're also going across live to Uganda, where we're talking to Ronald Katangoli and the man himself, Mr. Edward MPAGI. Can you hear us, gentlemen, in Uganda?
Hello, this is Edward MPAGI from Uganda.
Hello, Edward MPAGI from Uganda. It's so great to hear your voice and finally get to speak. And today on World Jam Global Radio, we're going to try and do you justice. Now, for those of you that are not fully aware and have not been up to date with what's been going on, Edward MPAGI was convicted and sentenced for murder and served 18 years on death row in Uganda. Now, that in itself, some people might turn around and say, well, a lot of people spend a lot of time on death row before being executed. But how would you feel if you spent 18 years on death row, having contested your guilt or innocence from the very beginning, only to find out that no crime was committed, and in fact the person that you've been accused of killing, sentenced to death for, is actually alive and well? Well, that is where we start with Edward MPAGI, the man sentenced to death for a murder that was never committed. Edward, tell us a bit about your story, my friend.
Because of grudges and family misunderstandings in my marriage, I was arrested and sentenced to death for murdering my neighbor who was actually alive. It is unbelievable that the court system could sentence me to death when I was actually innocent. I was sentenced to death together with my cousin brother, Fred, who only spent only 4 years on death row, and he died of complications in his stomach.
Your co-accused died while on death row.
Pardon?
Your co-accused died while he was on death row.
Yeah, he died on death row. He spent only 4 years. He got sick, and they could not take him to hospital because he was sentenced to death.
Wow. Even that in itself is shocking. We're talking about a murder that was committed or not committed. Two men sentenced to death for that murder, and serving their sentence on death row, with one of them dying on death row and never finding out the truth behind the corruption that lay behind his conviction and sentencing. David, can you just come in here a minute? Is that not just out of this world?
Yes. Edward, I'm calling from the East Coast of the United States. How are you doing? Edward, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Mr. David. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask you, you were 27 years old, you were married, you had children, and you're standing in a courtroom, and you're accused of murder, you're convicted of murder, and you've just been sentenced to death for killing a man who's walking earth and being hid by his family in another town. At that moment, what were you thinking? Did you ask yourself, is this possible? Am I in a dream? Has God deserted the world? Is there a conspiracy against me alone? What were your thoughts at that moment? Tell us a little bit about your emotion as the judge says, you will die. You will die. And you knew in your heart you never did any harm to this person.
At first, I fainted. And after I fainted. Yeah, I fainted. And after some time, it was unbelievable to me that the court system can sentence me to death for killing a person who was actually alive. After some time, I said, I'm going to make an appeal about the sentence. When I went to the Court of Appeal to appeal the sentence, the judge in the Court of Appeal said the judge who sentenced me to death was of a sound mind and his decision is respected. So the Court of Appeal also sentenced me to death. That is when I realized I was going to be killed, I was going to die. So that was heartbreaking, and it was unbelievable. We couldn't believe the court system could do that.
Most people would ask, can I just come in a second? Can I just come in a second? Most people would ask that for somebody to be sentenced to death, they must have had some evidence against you. What was the evidence that they had against you?
After the judge was bribed, he stood up and he said he has all the evidence that I murdered Mr. William. So he was basing on the evidence that he got that he sentenced me. I tried to convince him to go to the village and see if there was somebody who was buried in the village. But he said, I'm convinced and I have all the evidence you committed the offense. That is when he made his judgment.
Wow.
So there was no jury. No jury. It was a judge alone who made that decision?
Yeah, the judge made the decision.
One man?
Yes.
How do you know he was bribed?
Pardon?
How do you know that he had been bribed?
If he was not bribed, he would accept to go to the village to confirm and get testimonies from the village people. But he didn't allow me. He didn't allow that.
I see.
And
you said that. I'm sorry.
Hang on a minute, David.
You said that the family was blackmailing and had a malice against. I'm sorry. What? I said, Mr. Edward, you said that you're the victim or the supposed victim. You're the victim here, really, but the supposed victim of the fake murder had a family that was blackmailing your family and had malice toward your father. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was the judge not aware of that? Was he a part of that conspiracy? Are they the ones who dig in? I wonder what kind of a judge puts a price on a person's life like this? Like you, I mean, what kind of a bribe would you take to kill somebody?
It was like the village chief. The village chief where I was staying had a grudge with my father, with my family. So he was friends with the judge. So when he went to the judge, they could speak and they could agree on what to say in court. So they didn't give me time to defend myself.
Was this not a trial in front of a jury? Sorry, David, 1 second. Was this not a trial in front of a jury, or was it just a judge?
It was like it is like in Uganda. The court is one side, and the victim is on this side. So they could agree on whatever they want to do.
So what you're saying is, hang on a minute. So what you're saying is that there's no jury. You know, in America, in England, we have a jury.
The judge can always influence that.
Right. So the jury is the panel of peers that assess the information that's provided, the evidence that's provided, and decide on guilt or innocence. Was there not a jury that decided on your guilt or innocence, or was this just the sole responsibility of the judge?
It's the responsibility of the judge, and you have no voice.
Wow. Now, you also said, Edward, you also said that the judge said that he had sufficient evidence to believe the story against you in order to find you guilty of the murder. What was the evidence? What was the evidence that the judge said he had? What was it that he presented as his evidence? Was it not spoken out?
The judge in the court is the final man.
Okay.
The judge in the court.
But you had the judge, and then you went to the Court of Appeal, right? So the Court of Appeal,
yes.
The Court of Appeal then reviews all the information that was provided in the original trial, and then makes another decision. So what information did the Court of Appeal have that the judge said that he had that found you guilty?
The Court of Appeal depended on the previous conviction.
Okay.
They said the judge who sentenced me to death was of a sound mind, and they could not reverse his decision, so they thought his decision was the right one.
Okay, well listen guys, listen to me very carefully and correct me if I'm wrong, right? Please do.
Okay, so now you've been sentenced, let me, Kervin, let me...
yeah, go ahead, Dave, go ahead.
Mr. Edward,
yes.
So now you've been sentenced to death, and you're taken off to prison.
Yes.
I guess it was the prison you mentioned in Lutzira, is that correct?
Yeah.
And how many people are in that? How many people are in that prison? How did they tell you you would die? And when did you expect to die? When did you expect to die? And what measures did you take psychologically at that moment? Because you are a survivor. You are a survivor. But you're a survivor of a mental torture. You've been tortured. Any man who's been told and survives 5 calls to the death row to be executed has been mentally tortured. So I want to know, how did you survive that state of torture? What fortified you? What gave you strength? How did you survive?
At first, I was scared of death, and every day I was crying all the time. In my past year in Desmond, that I began realizing that God can save my life, and I can even give my life to Jesus Christ. He can help me survive the death row. I began teaching little inmates, teaching them the Bible, and giving them counseling because I was older than many of them. There are about 400 inmates. So I began supporting prison itself, counseling violent inmates. So I became a support to the prison system, and through my work in prison, I survived different attempts of execution. During my stay on death row, 52 of my closest friends were kicked out of death row and they were executed. In 1999, 28 of my closest friends were executed. But because I was a support to the prison, they looked at me as a support staff inside because I could speak to them, I could counsel them, I could organize them. So anytime they could think about putting my name on the execution list, they could think like they're losing a support staff inside. So I had discipline, and I could speak to fellow inmates about how to behave, how to work together, how to be patient, how to believe in God. So I brought a lot of change in the prison inside. So that is one of the reasons that I survived execution.
Can Edward, Mr. MPAGI? Edward, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes,
how do you focus your mind on doing good for others, right? While you're sitting in your cell or in prison waiting to die. How did you manage to take, because it must have been a traumatic experience for you. You've just been, as David has just said, you've just been sentenced to death, right? For a crime you didn't commit, right? Now you know you're gonna die because you've gone for your trial. The appeal court has upheld the original decision and said you're gonna die, and so now you're just waiting to die. Is that how it was for you?
When all that happened,
did you believe you was gonna die?
God. Yes, because on several occasions they picked my friends that I used to sleep with for so many years and they executed me. So I knew one day, my name could come up and they could execute me. So on death row, there is no joking. You can be, because not exhausted. So I knew I had no chance to survive. It is only through God that I thought that my life could be spared. So I believe in God and worked and I did good and helped my friends and I forgave everybody who wronged me, who testified against me, who sentenced me to death. And then life continued like that.
Wow. Satish.
Now you speak, Edward, you speak about this, some prison authorities helped you from being hanged. What do you think led them to so be obstinate toward the government and help you and even protect you and save your life, knowing that in doing so they may jeopardize themselves? I find that a ray of light in the very dark place you found yourself.
Pardon? Can you say that?
Edward.
Yes.
Yes, you said that when you were in prison, there were and helped you avoid the death penalty, that is, from being hanged while you were in prison. That's a ray of light in a very dark place. What do you think gave them the courage and the strength to help you in spite of the government's decision that you should die?
It was jumping a bit. I didn't get the question right. Can we summarize it, please? I didn't get something. It was jump. What did you say again, David?
Kervin, did you hear my question?
Yeah, I did, but Edward is breaking up, and I can't hear. I can hear you, David. But there's a lot of background noise coming from somebody, and I can't work out where it's coming from, and it's really interfering with the call. That's better. Who was that?
Yeah, there's a lot of static somewhere, and I heard a pen.
All right,
Okay,
somebody
now.
just turned off the external sound, and it went quiet. Who was that? There we go. Is somebody driving?
Edward.
Yes.
No.
I can hear you.
Edward, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you, David. I can hear you.
Okay, Edward, forgive me. I will try to ask one more time.
Okay.
You stated that when you were in prison, there were some authorities and guards who helped you avoid the death penalty by hanging. And this is a ray of light and a very dark place in which you found yourself. What do you think those men, the courage and the strength to fight against the government decision that you should be executed?
You want to? Are you asking about how? Are you asking about how I survived the situation?
No, Edward.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm asking you what do you think the courage to have?
Oh yeah, I understand. He didn't know me. I was just a village boy. So I think he was trying to influence his friend who wanted me to die. And I think he was given some money to do that in form of a bribe.
Okay, so Edward, what David is really asking you is, what do you think of the courage of the guards that protected you from the death penalty, the ones that didn't bring you forward for execution when it could have been your time? They must have been. Did you not think they were courageous to stand up against the regime that was trying to have you sentenced to death?
No, I think they helped me because I was supportive of I was supportive. They worked inside. I could speak to inmates about how to behave. I think that's how they spared me.
Okay. Satish.
Yeah.
Hello, Satish. Satish.
Yes.
Satish.
Yes.
We are at a point in this conversation where I just want to pause it for there and just bring you in as far as injustice is concerned, because you've got a man who's sat up in front of a judge. I can't work out whether there was a jury or not, but if there wasn't a jury, the jury had no influence. And if there wasn't a jury, then the decision was solely left in the hands of the judge. The judge finds him guilty, having been bribed, right? He then appeals, it goes to the courts of appeal, and the court of appeal gets the information and the evidence that was provided to the judge, that the judge made his decision on, and then upholds the decision made by the first judge. How incredible is that alone in its standing?
I'm sorry, I can catch the last part. I'm going to have to put my headphone back in again. I'm sorry, I can't hear this properly.
Okay.
Could you repeat the last part, please?
Okay. Well, how incredible is it that the court of appeal judge actually upholds the decision made by the first judge? Doesn't the appeal judge get the information and the evidence? Because the first judge was bribed, right? To act against MPAGI. But surely a court of appeal judge, he's not in the same category. So why is he upholding a decision that obviously is based on no evidence whatsoever?
I would imagine it much like appeal systems all over the world, that what happens in them is that there are strict rules about what evidence you're allowed to bring forward, and they don't like to interfere with the verdict of the previous court. Over here, it tends to be with in terms of juries, but in other countries where there's solely a judge, it's the judge's decision. Essentially, the problem is that they think that if you overturn the previous verdict, it causes a loss of confidence in the original criminal justice system and in judgments that are handed down by judges and juries in the trials. Actually, what it does is make it even worse, because when you do have to own up to these cases, it's much, much worse because you've tried to cover it up for so long. One of the things that I find astonishing is that we now know that the alleged murder victim was alive and well throughout. That would imagine that you would have a pathologist. What did the pathologist do? How did they actually prove that the man was dead when we know he wasn't?
See, my question has to be is, when somebody's murdered, surely there has to be a body.
Yeah, that's my question.
So there has to be a body. So on what evidence did they actually conclude that a murder had been committed? That has to be the first question. Isn't that right, David?
I'm sorry?
When in the case of a murder, can you hear me?
There's no conviction of murder without a body. You have to have a body.
Usually there isn't. In rare circumstances, you can convict without a body. This isn't one of them. They were essentially saying that these two murdered Mr. William Wandiaka. If that is the case, then William Wandiaka's family should have been able to produce the body. They should have been able to say, here is the proof positive that William Wandiaka has been murdered. We say it's them who did it. There should have been the body should have been subjected to a post-mortem examination, and it should have established what the cause of death was. None of this could have happened.
Is there any comparison?
You have what we call circumstantial evidence for a murder, but you have to have a body.
There has to be a body. I for the life of me, I cannot understand how a man could be convicted of murder without a body. This one baffles me. Is there any other comparisons anywhere else in the world where anybody has been convicted of murder and sent on to death row without a body being provided? Is there any evidence of this anywhere in the world?
I mean, even in the United States, excuse me, even in America, if a spouse dies, you have to wait, I believe, 5 to 7 years before a court will declare the person absent in such a way as the other spouse can become remarried. It's not serious. I mean, much less to convict someone of murder without a body. This is inconceivable.
Edward,
I would have to say this has happened.
Edward,
is in other jurisdictions.
Gentlemen, 1 second. Edward,
after World War II.
Edward, can you hear me, Edward?
I just something here?
Yes.
Hi, Edward.
Yes. Hello.
Okay.
Hello,
Do you know while you was on death row?
Hello.
While you was on death row, did you ever hear about this man still being alive?
About the man being alive?
Yes. You know the man that you was meant to murder? Did you ever hear any stories of him being alive while you was waiting on death row?
When I was on death row, he could come even to the village, but the death penalty is reversible. It is hard to reverse the death penalty. As Mr. Satish said, the first court did the mistake, and it was not easy for the second court to correct the mistake.
Okay, but
You
my question has to be, right, if the person you are accused of killing is alive and well, and people know he's alive and well, and somebody sees him walking down the street and says, hang on a minute, there's a guy sitting in jail, waiting on death row, about to be executed, apparently for murdering this guy, doesn't anybody speak out and hasn't, you know what I mean? Am I the only one getting this at the moment? Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Can anybody hear me?
After. Yeah, I can hear you. Can I respond to that?
Absolutely.
When you sentence to death in Uganda, and you're done with the court, Court of Appeal, High Court, you all wait for a presidential pardon or execution. You have two alternatives. Either you get a presidential pardon or you get an execution. So, in this situation, I was supposed to get a presidential pardon. Yes.
Wow.
May I
Yeah, coming in, Dave.
ask?
Yes.
Edward, does Uganda use British common law? I mean, you use British common law in the court system? Okay, so the hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, he can hear you, David.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can all hear you,
Okay,
David.
so I think what Kervin, okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello. I can hear you.
It seems to me that Kervin is saying, can you hear?
Yeah, we can hear you, David.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Edward?
I can hear you.
Kervin?
Yes, we can all hear you, David.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, I think what Kervin is trying to say is they're non. I'm going to hang up, and you call me back, Kervin.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna hang up the call, and I'm gonna call you all back, okay? Because we're not getting through on this. Right, ladies and gentlemen, stand by. I'm gonna recall this call because I think there's two calls going on here. Nope. Whoever it is did. Hello. Come on, gentlemen. Let me just play this track.
Know that your flag represents the sunshine of Africa, the black nature of the African and the blood of the African people, and there's a certain nationalism in Uganda that I don't in Kenya, where you have a large number of Indian, Asians, and Muslims, and I don't know if that's because it's landlocked, but how do you explain the Uganda willingness to listen to American evangelicals who come there from Texas and other states where they have the death penalty, and they want to create more hatred in your country. I mean, you as a Christian living there, a man who has suffered injustice, what do you make of that? You don't feel we've got enough trouble without you Americans coming here and causing more?
No, it's okay. I would love to get
hatred.
I would love to get visitors here to speak to people, to speak on radio. Their life changing. We love to receive them.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I was saying visitors are welcome, like American visitors. They can come in and say something to the population, speak on radio, meet people in churches. Their gospel is life changing.
You know, guys, can you all hear me clearly?
Yeah, but I'm getting to the question about American missionaries. Missionaries. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Satish, are you here, Satish?
Yes, I'm still here. Yeah, I'm here.
What I'm trying to ask is, how do you feel as a person working for justice in Uganda with American missionaries, evangelicals from the South, coming and asking your government to create a death penalty for groups of minorities and other religious fanatical ideas? How do you feel about that? How do you feel? I would not like foreign people coming to America and telling me how to live. I wouldn't like that. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, but here it depends on what the state supports. So I think it is a good idea because America is a democracy, and we believe it's a modern world, modern country. So it's good.
Maybe let me try one more time. I'm sorry, Kervin. Let me ask one more time. Edward, do you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay. In America, we have several news broadcasts who have done shows on American religious people as evangelicals, Protestants from the deep south of where we had slavery. And they come to Uganda and they lobby your legislature, your Congress in Uganda, in Kampala, to enact the death penalty against gay people. And this is a big issue in America, that we have missionaries and asking the death penalty, something that you almost suffered. How does that affect you and your religion and your view of Uganda?
I hope I got you right this time. I think we believe in human rights. Can you get me? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, gentlemen, keep talking. Let's keep the dialogue going. Let's keep the dialogue going.
Well, I'm waiting for. What I'm trying to get at is, you are a man, Edward, who almost died. You were almost hanged because of an injustice.
Yes.
There are people in Uganda who have a different view of human.
You mean people who have joined me?
Sexuality. Now, if you are forbidden to speak about this, then you should say so. But if you can speak about it, I'm talking about homosexuals in Uganda.
Yes.
Americans have called for them to be executed. And some people of your own government tried to pass a law to execute homosexuals. You are a person who almost suffered execution. What do you think of that law, and what do you think of Americans trying to get that law enacted?
Oh, I understand. That is wonderful. I don't homosexual because I support human rights and the law was reversed in Uganda, and it's not a good idea. I don't believe in execution of people. I work in the global abolition of death penalty, and in Uganda, I work to see an end to the death penalty because I'm a victim and I'm innocent people dying on death row. So I don't believe in the death penalty in any form.
So, in other words, what you're saying is you don't actually believe in it. You don't. He doesn't believe in the death penalty at all.
At all.
Yes. Yeah, I got that.
Death.
But you were in Texas.
The penalty is never the answer.
It's never the answer.
Yes.
Now you said that you have forgiven the people who framed you. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
You've forgiven the judge?
I forgive the judge. I forgive.
You forgave him?
Yeah, I forgave him.
Why do you forgive them?
I forgive him because he was probably under the influence. He didn't know what he was doing.
But how do you know he didn't know what he was doing? If he took a bribe, right?
He took a bribe, and that's what he thought was good for me. But I thank God I came out.
It was a quick program. I mean, did you forgive them to forgive them, or did you forgive them like Nelson Mandela when he left prison in Cape Town? He said, "I left the toxic poison of hatred and bitterness behind me. I have forgiven them." Did you forgive them for yourself, or did you forgive them for their actions?
I forgave them for myself because I never wanted that to happen again to any human being. And I condemn what they did because it is bad for any human being. But I still forgive them. I forgive them.
Edward, Mr. MPAGI.
Yes.
While you was on death row, right? Did you encounter, converse, discuss, meet with anybody else while you was there that had been on death row, having been not guilty of any crime and been sentenced there by a corrupt judge?
He's made many of them.
So there are many more people that was on death row, right, who had been sentenced to death for crimes that either they did not commit or were not even committed. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes. And I continue to visit the facility where I spent 18 years. I continue to visit, and they are still there.
And they are still there, waiting to be executed.
Waiting to be executed.
Now, surely that's an argument. Surely that's a platform for protest.
Edward.
Adam?
Yeah, go on, David.
Edward?
Yes.
Okay, Edward, this is David again.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned in an article not long ago that there was a man named Joseph Julien. That's the way to say Julien. Joseph Julien. And he was a victim on death row. Uncles wanted to take over his father's land. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct, that his uncle's willing to take his father's land?
Yes.
Okay. So what I've gathered from a lot of things you have said and written is that in Uganda, there are instances that reflect Europe in the Middle Ages. And in the Middle Ages, a woman who inherited land or money was not protected by a husband or a father, was frequently accused of being a witch, and burned. She had no protection. And they took her land and money. And it seems to me that in Uganda, from what you're saying, when people want the land or the money, or the envy people like you, a young man who had a company, was on the road to success, they envy you and want something, or they want what your father's is, or they have some kind of a conflict. But somewhere there's an economic interest. The court system is frequently subjected to corruption, and people wind up dead at the hands of the government. Is that the situation?
That is true. And it's very true.
So it's an economic crime.
Yeah.
They're saying that it is using the government for economic reasons to fulfill a personal interest of those in power.
Oh, yeah.
Satish, are you there?
Yes,
Satish?
I'm still here.
Are things like this, Satish, I don't know your ethnic background, but I know that shortly after Idi Amin took over, it seems like 500,000 Asian Indians, Pakistanis and Indians left Uganda. Some 8,000 came, and the rest went to Kenya, other places in Africa, back to India. It seems to me that there's a certain type of economic tribalism or nationalism that has corrupted the system in Uganda. And I know that happens also in certain places in other parts of the world, in India, for example, where women are abused. Can you speak to this at all, or maybe ask a relevant question to Edward about it?
Well, I think if I do that, I think it actually needs to be mentioned that the policy of blaming the immigrant community of Asians in Uganda was not begun by Idi Amin. It actually has its roots in the previous government of Milton Obote. And that needs to be mentioned because the Obote government is the government, the second coming of Obote government, I mean. When the government of, when Idi Amin was overthrown, there was a period of uncertainty before an electoral commission headed by Paulo Mwanga, I believe, decided that Obote had won the election, and it led to the current President Yoweri Museveni going into guerrilla warfare because they rejected the finding. That ended up with Museveni taking power. But what is important about all of this is that the fundamental injustice, the beginnings of the injustice, happened under the Obote government. And it is a de facto government because it simply was not legitimate. The government itself and also the criminal justice system was fundamentally corrupt. Any system that can allow a miscarriage of justice like this one is so bad it's almost wrong to call it a miscarriage of justice. It doesn't deserve any kind of name of justice. It's such an affront to every single criminal tolerated in any way whatsoever. So because of that, I think you need to actually look at the political events that were going on around that time. This is actually very important because the government would put this right in the end in a MPAGI to a presidential pardon. What was the Obote government? And because of that, there is a possibility, and I would say a necessity, that they need to establish
seems like we've lost the signal for now, and I'm trying to get it back up again as we speak. Stay with me. This is World Jam Global Radio.
World Jam Global Radio. This is Clarity.
You and I back together again. The world is singing. You and I.
Okay, here we go. Who we got here?
Okay, I'm David.
Right, now that's better. Here was the problem, David. This is what we've got to remember. Nobody should call into the show, and they should let me call out. What happened was 2 or 3 people called at the same time, and we had an absolutely terrible cross line, and that's why we couldn't hear each other.
I hear you perfectly now.
Now I can hear you perfectly. All right, so let's get everybody else back in the call. Who have we got now? Hello, there's somebody else on the line. Is that Edward?
Yeah, this is Edward. It was internet problem.
Okay, no, it wasn't an internet problem. It was about 3 of you calling into the show at the same time. Now we've got clarity. I can hear David clearly. I can hear you clearly. All we've got to do is wait for Satish.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's all we're waiting for is Satish to come onto the line. Let me get him in. Let me just get Satish into the line. He should be here any second. But guys, David, you carry on now because MPAGI can hear you clearly.
Edward,
Yes.
It's David. It's David.
Yes,
So,
David.
I want to follow up with a statement you made. You said when you got out of prison, you decided not to sue the government for false imprisonment and false conviction. You made that decision not to sue the government. Is that correct? Okay. Your explanation, as I understood it, was you didn't want to cause problems for other people who might get a pardon. Is that correct? Is that correct? Hello?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, sure.
again,
Yeah.
okay.
Sure.
So
That is
the economic issue arises again. You are afraid to seek economic justice for your false imprisonment because the government may not want to pay out the money that it would owe you for that false imprisonment, and therefore you don't mention it to other people because then they may not let them out because they may want money too. Is that correct?
Pardon? Again? One more time?
I'm saying that you are afraid to apply for economic sanctions and retribution because you are afraid if you do so, the government will be less likely to let out other people who have been falsely imprisoned.
Yes, sure. True.
So again, we come back to the economic issue. The crime is initiated because of an economic issue. Somebody wants what's yours or your father's or the land of your uncle or someone. And then you have an economic issue on the end. The government may not want to pay damages, and therefore they allow the injustice to continue. Is that the situation?
Yes.
So it's a vicious circle. Do you hear that, Kervin?
I hear that. It's an absolutely a very vicious circle.
And the economic interest cannot be avoided. And that comes to my question of how can Uganda be a part of the British Commonwealth and the Queen is sitting on top of your country, so to speak. I believe you're still a part of the British Commonwealth. And this kind of injustice is allowed to exist within a fellow nation. What's the purpose of this club? What do they do? Go and play golf and tennis? What's the purpose, Kervin? I mean, you're part of the British Commonwealth.
It's a very closed shop, hang on a minute, David. Can you just talk a second? We're trying to get Satish back into the call, and I've got Linda messaging me on another one.
So Edward, okay, sure. Edward, let me go back to another question that I had here on you. You said that the stigma the stigma of being convicted and sent on death row has not left you or your family and will stay with you for the rest of your life and your lives, I should say. Tell me a little bit about that stigma. What does it mean to you personally, and what does it mean to you professionally?
Basically, when people say you are on death, everybody think that whoever goes on death row is a criminal. So some people look at me as a criminal because I was on death row. So that can't go away. You can always be thinking about it because people believe that each and everybody who is in death row, who is in prison, is a criminal. You understand, David?
I understand. So it's like when you go to jail and you say, I'm an innocent person, somebody is typing. Who's typing? When you go to jail, you say, I'm an innocent person, and the guards say, yeah, everybody here is innocent. Sarcastically, right?
Okay, I think we've also got Satish back as well now. Are you there, Satish?
Yes, I am. I don't know what happened there.
Right, okay. Now, once again, gentlemen, we now have a clear line and everybody's clear because we're in on my line. All right? Next time, the next show we do, remember, nobody calls into the show. I call you. I create the group, I call you, and we have this kind of clarity. I love it when a plan comes together. Right. Okay. let's get on with the show because believe you me, it's been
Kervin,
yeah, go ahead, mate.
Kervin, let me ask Satish a question, and lighthearted. Satish, in your absence, did you enjoy dinner?
Not yet, but
okay. So Edward was speaking about the stigma of having been on death row and how people, even though he's been pardoned and he's out, and he said people still say you were on death row, you must be a criminal, you deserve to be there. Everybody in jail says they're innocent, ha ha, that kind of thing. How do you relate to that stigma is what I asked Edward, and we were waiting for his answer on that. Edward, are you there?
Yeah, Edwards is still there, but I do believe there's a signal problem his end.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it to you, Kervin.
Let's for me, I really want to try and capture the real story that an individual can be found guilty, convicted, and sentenced to death for a murder that not only did he not commit, because you could understand somebody being found guilty innocently for a murder that was committed.
Kervin, can I interrupt? It's not just an individual, it's two people.
Okay, two people, all right. Two people for the price of one. Let me just carry on here a minute, without interruption, sure. Just 1 minute. Because what I'm trying to get at, right, is when somebody's actually convicted of wrongfully convicted of a murder, it's normally of a murder that was committed. And you can understand all the mix-up of forensic evidence, you can understand all the police corroboration where they can't find a real culprit, so they're going to drum one up, and maybe there's a guy that's been causing them problem in the neighborhood or the community for a while, and they want to stitch him up and get him away anyway, so let's get him for the crime. We can plant his gun at the scene of the crime and all the rest of that. We can get all of that, and no, it's not right, but you can understand somebody being convicted of a murder when a murder is committed. But how do we get to a place when somebody's not just convicted for murder, but sentenced to death row for a murder, and a murder that was never committed? The person is alive and well, walking, breathing, living, enjoying life, drinking water from the fountain, you name it, and you're sitting there on death row waiting to die. How does that happen in the 21st century? That's my question. Well, how do we, in any country, anywhere in the world, how do we have this? Where somebody can be sentenced to death, right, for not only a murder they didn't commit, but for one that was never committed, with no evidence, with no body. And I know we tried to touch on it earlier on, but the line was so poor that there was no clarity to any answer. Satish, Give it to me. Tell me how we got there.
How we got there is that the criminal justice system didn't make the demands that it should have done in terms of the evidence. For example, the point I was making was, if there had been this murder, then surely there should have been a body, and that body should have been examined, and they should have had proof of how the murder was committed. None of this happened, but it isn't fair to simply hold Uganda responsible for this and say, you alone are responsible. This has happened in other jurisdictions. It would be shocking to tell you how many of the other jurisdictions this has happened in. For example, it happened in China. It certainly happened in Pakistan as well. And those aren't the only ones where this has happened. Even in the United States, there have been ones like this, admittedly not recently, but it has happened. One of the big problem with this is that people are not actually demanding the quality of evidence. If there had been sufficient demand to say, you say that these two men have committed this murder and killed William Wandiaki, produce his body, or at least tell us where it's gone or how it's been disposed of. None of these questions, which would have given the lie to this, were asked at the time, and that is to do with a corrupt criminal justice system. That system was implemented by the Obote government, and it was responsible for it. What needs to happen now is that we need to move forward from this and say, we need answers. It's not acceptable to simply say, okay, this has happened, it was a long time ago, let's move on. You cannot move on until you actually understand why this happened, how it happened, and how you are going to assure your people this is never, ever going to happen again.
Right, well, that can't happen, because having spoken to Edward MPAGI a short while ago, one of the things that I asked him and he responded to was, did he meet, converse with, or have any interaction with anybody else that was there in similar circumstances as him? And A, he answered yes, and then B, he said he goes back and frequently visits the same location where he was being held, and they are still there. Now, what's being done about those that had met with the same fate as Edward MPAGI, who were in prison, convicted for crimes that either they didn't commit or weren't even committed? What's the rest of the world doing about the corrupt government and judicial system in Uganda, while we're sitting down here trying to pretend that it's all happy-go-lucky in our own backyard?
Well, obviously, it's not enough is being done. The way that MPAGI's case was finally overturned would suggest that the very questions that were asked in his case need to be shouted loudly in the other cases too, and there needs to be the investigation. If there are other examples where people did not actually get murdered, but there have been convictions of it, then presumably the alleged victims are still alive. So find them. You find the murder victim alive, that's the end of it.
Okay.
Well, let me jump in here a little bit. The idea that a body was necessary in British common law really arose at about the 17th century. And it was a very famous case of Campton Wonder. This guy was accused of murder, and later on, he was actually hanged. And later on, the person who he supposedly killed had been kidnapped and was a slave in Turkey. And thereafter, you had to have a body in British common law until the 20th century to prove a murder. You had to have a body. Now, in the 20th century, it was no longer required to have a body because forensic evidence made it possible, as proven in a famous case in Britain, in which a man was killed and then put in acid, and he was completely dissolved, except for a pair of teeth. A couple teeth were left over. And forensic evidence proved that those teeth belonged to that man, and the residue in the acid tank proved that his body had been dissolved. So you didn't have a body, but you had evidence from the body. So it's gone from the body to evidence from the body. Now, in Mr. Edward MPAGI's case, you don't even have a hair. You don't even have a tooth, not even a toe, to prove that that body had been damaged in any way by Edward. And that is the problem that I think Sashi has hit here so perfectly. There's no body, no evidence that a body existed, and no residue from the body, and that is the problem.
Oh,
and I don't know how that can even happen in Uganda or any other country in the world. It would not be possible in the United States.
Absolutely, but again, as I said earlier on, surely at some point, while Edward MPAGI, right, was sitting on death row, waiting to be executed, right, somebody in the know would have been walking down the street and gone, "Oh, that's the guy, Edward MPAGI. He's actually in jail for murdering. Look, there he is. He's alive. Let's go tell somebody." I mean,
now let me say this, Kervin and Sashi and Edward. My question is, as a historian and a philosopher, a tough question, Edward, and you might want to listen to this. When the system is so corrupt, when justice has been so prostituted, when you yourself have suffered so much, have you not the responsibility to do all you can to hold that judge and that government and those false accusers accountable so that those injustices will not happen in the future? It's very nice for you to forgive personally, Edward, but do you not have a greater community responsibility to fight against that kind of corruption so that it will not happen again?
Can you hear that, Edward?
Yes. I condemn what they did, and I still support the abolition of death penalty in Uganda. But as a human being, I do not have bad feelings for them. But still, I work for human rights and
okay, Edward. Edward, I clearly hear you, but what David is trying to say here, and unfortunately I have to come alongside this. You can forgive. No one's asking you to have any bad feelings. I'm born again Christian myself, so forgiveness has to be the key for the way forward for mankind. I agree with all of that, but also there are consequences. There has to be consequences for our actions. And what we're saying is, while you're saying that you're okay with it, you've actually already said, right, there are several more people sitting in death row in a similar circumstance to yours. Do you not have a basic human right duty, a godly duty, a Christian duty, right?
Moral duty.
To be able to turn around and say, well, you know what, I'm going to forgive you for what you did to me, but you're going to stand up and account for what you did to me and others. Do you not have a duty to do that? Do you not feel you have a duty to do that?
What I've been able to do is to keep my story, to shout out about my story, about what happened to me, and they need to change. I continue to go back to prison to visit my brothers and my sisters and encourage them, and I speak to the outside community, speak on radio, speak on TV about the injustices.
You know, Edward, Edward, listen to me very carefully. I think that what you went through was the most traumatic, unjust experience that a man could ever wish or hope to go against. And I am not for 1 minute gonna minimize what it is that you've gone through and how traumatic it must have been for you. But you're free now, and you're going to visit your brothers and sisters in prison who've been subjected to the same thing that you were subjected to, and you know who's responsible. You know the people that are responsible for this, and you're saying that you're okay with that. Now, somebody's asking a question, and is this judge somebody who is dangerous to go up against? Is this judge somebody who's powerful, and if you went up against him, it would be even more catastrophic? Are you trying to say that by going up against this individual or others like him, that you're putting other people's lives in jeopardy?
The judge is already dead now. The judge died.
The judge is already dead now.
So, the judge is already dead now.
Wow.
If he was alive, we'll probably go back to his office and talk to him.
Okay, what about the what about the appeal judge? Is the appeal judge still alive? Is the appeal? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Kervin, let me jump in. Edward, do you hear me? Edward?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, here's the issue. When the government of Uganda sentenced you to die, they did it in the name of the people of Uganda. The people of Uganda versus Edward Mugabe. That's the way it works, right? The people of Uganda. Now, the people of Uganda have done a grave injustice to you. And you don't even know where two of your children are. Your wife died while you were in prison. You lost your business. You lost your fortune. The people of Uganda have a right, let me say, I hear some interference. The people of Uganda have a moral and legal obligation to make right what they did wrong. You know, after World War II, the Jewish people, hello?
Yes.
The Jewish people
Sure.
did not forgive, they did not forgive the Nazis. They did not forgive the Germans. They said, I may personally forgive you, but we will not forgive you because we cannot forgive you for what you did to other people. And you have no right to forgive the government of Uganda and those people who did to you what they did. You have no right to forgive them knowing other people are sitting in prison in similar circumstances to yours. And therefore, you have a moral and legal responsibility to your fellow Ugandans to make the government pay you so that they know in the future when they do something of this nature, it is going to cost them a lot of money.
Absolutely.
You have that obligation. And even today in Germany, there's a 93-year-old man, Nazi, standing trial and may go to prison for something he did 65 years ago. You cannot allow the government to get away with this. And I think that it is very loving of you to forgive. But I ask you, do you have the right to forgive? Do you have the right to forgive for the people of Uganda? Because it is the people of Uganda who came against you. Do you understand my question?
I think, David, I'm going to come in here a second. David.
Yeah.
I think he has the right to forgive, but I don't think he's got the right to allow them to get away with it. Forgiveness does not come without consequence. You know?
No, what I mean, Kervin, a good point, but I'm saying he has the right to forgive what they did to him, but he does not have the right to forgive what they are doing to others.
Absolutely not.
Only those people have that.
Absolutely not.
Right now, I've just read here where he has all these people on death row that Edward talks about here, and they're continuing to do these. Joseph Kihone, Isaiah Bechoma, Silas Kazembo. These people are on death row. He can't forgive what the government of Uganda and the people of Uganda in the government's name is doing to these people.
Absolutely
and
not.
And he has to fight. And
Absolutely
I'm saying
not.
it's good to be a religious man, but we are people in a community. We survive by working together. We cannot isolate ourselves. We cannot ignore the problems. Now, I sympathize with Edward that the psychological and the heartfelt pain, the physical pain, the mental pain, the pain in the soul, the questioning, where is God when you're all alone? I understand that has a traumatic effect, and he may not be ready now, but he cannot surrender his right to make the people of Uganda who support that government pay for what they did in spite of his personal willingness to forgive them.
Absolutely, I agree.
Can I add something here?
Go in there, Satish.
it's been forgotten that it wasn't the government of Yoweri Museveni that did this. It was the government which has been overthrown by Museveni that caused this injustice. Yes, Edward should be given proper assistance in rebuilding his life, but the forgiveness he has given is a personal forgiveness for those who wronged him. He hasn't forgiven the system for what it did to him. So I don't think it's fair to put an obligation on him and say you cannot forgive. It's his personal choice, the extent of the forgiveness that he has given. And quite frankly, I applaud him. He's a remarkable man to be able to.
Satish, I agree with everything that you say, but let me just add this.
Satish,
Hang on a minute, gentlemen.
I understand what you're saying.
Gentlemen,
but the government of Germany today. Wait. Let me say the government. Hello.
Yeah, go on. Carry on, David.
The government of Germany is not the government that killed 6 million Jews, but it is that government that is making compensation for the crime of the previous government. So the fact that a previous government did this does not excuse the government of the people of Uganda.
You know, I think we've just lost Edward MPAGI and the people from Uganda, but we've had them on for over an hour. But we're going to carry on with this because I'm not done with it myself.
Okay, well, I didn't like the idea. With all due respect, I don't believe that Mr. Satish, who I respect greatly, could speak for Edward in that instance.
That's fine, but let me just.
I'm not speaking for him,
gentlemen. Satish, 1 second. Satish. 1 second, let me just add this, right? Because here's the principal concept here, right? So you're a non-smoker, right? And you don't take drugs, right? And you're sitting in your house, and somebody comes to visit, and they come into your house and they stand in your living room, and they roll up a joint, and they're a good friend of yours, or a good friend of your partner's, or a good friend of your children, and you sit down there and you say nothing. What that says to that individual at that moment in time is that you are okay with what they're doing. Now, this is the point that David is trying to make in a much larger scale. If you do not challenge the behavior of anybody that does wrong, in respect, what you're actually saying is you're okay with that. Right? And what David is trying to say further, and I'm in agreement with, is that yes, Edward has the right to personally forgive them for what he's done for what they did to him. But for him to do nothing, for him to not challenge that, for him to not make them accountable, is almost saying, I'm okay with that.
And he is challenging them. He has personally forgiven the people who wronged him. He hasn't forgiven the system that wronged him. He is campaigning for people who have been wrongly accused and have been left on death row. If you actually read his life history since then, it's been almost nothing but campaigning for people on death row. MPAGI's asking, can you call him back, please?
Yeah, tell him he can just call straight back into the group.
Okay, I'll try and do that. I'm simply saying that what he is doing is campaigning for the people who have been left behind on death row wrongly. He is doing all of that. He hasn't forgiven the system, and he hasn't walked away from the people that he's left behind. He's actually doing all this and more.
Let me say this. I understand what you're saying, but that would be the equivalent of Jews at the end of World War II, our Polish people, our Russian people, who suffered at the vicious, murderous hands of the Nazis, to say, oh, in the future, we're going to work so that there are no more wars and there are no more genocides. But those who did it, we're going to not worry about Goebbels and Hitler and Himmler and Eichmann. We're not going to worry about Mengele. We're not going to worry about the ones who perpetrated the crime. We're just going to work for a better world. That's what I hear you saying, Satish.
No, not exactly what I am saying. If you recall, I've been saying there needs to be a Truth and Justice Commission into this case to establish exactly why it went wrong, how it went wrong, and how we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. Surely that is actually saying, I don't agree that we shouldn't do anything about it. I don't agree that we simply let them off the hook over this completely. What I'm saying is, let us find out exactly what went wrong, how it went wrong, and stop it happening again. In other words, not just one part of it, the whole lot of it.
Well, maybe I'm too much. Forgive me, Kervin, you said you're a born-again Christian. Maybe I'm too much with the original text of the Bible, the Old Testament. Because in the Old Testament, it says very clearly, those who have testified falsely against his brother, and that means those who, like the corrupt judge, quote, then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. So you shall put away the evil, so that you may put away the evil from among you. And that means that Mr. MPAGI must try to do to the judge and his false accusers and to that government exactly what they did to him. Try to put an end to their evil and the evil among them. That is what I'm trying to say. And the Lord and the moral system does not, and the history of the Western legal system does not give him the right to evade that responsibility to put that evil aside. He has to fight it. Just as we, my people, have fought the Nazis, and there's a new movie out, maybe you've seen it, The Golden Woman, where a family in California recovered some stolen Klimt paintings by the Nazis from Austria that were worth $200 million 70 years later. We don't forget, and we will put the evil aside. And that's what I'm saying to Mr. MPAGI. Now, on the other hand, as a human, I certainly sympathize with the emotional and traumatic effects such a fight could have upon a man who suffered 20 years of pain that we personally can't imagine.
Okay. And again, to an extent, I agree. The forgiveness is MPAGI's to give, but the consequences must still remain, because somebody has to answer. That is biblical. MPAGI has talked about his godly beliefs and views and how God has helped him in all of what he did, and because of his relationship with God, he was able to be patient while he was waiting on death row. He was able to focus on helping others while he was sitting on death row. He was able to take himself away from his personal circumstance while he was on death row because of his godly relationship. Then surely he could lean on his godly relationship to see that there has to be a turnaround in the behavior and the attitude of those people that condemned him, persecuted him, and put him into prison, for them to be able to move on forward. And without consequences, how can they be a turnaround? Surely.
But like he says, most of them are dead.
But the government exists. I mean, look at Nelson Mandela. The government that Nelson Mandela eventually replaced in South Africa was not the government that had put him in prison. It was a different man. It wasn't Botu. It was a different man. It was a different apartheid regime. But that did not stop Nelson Mandela. He did not come out of prison and say, I forgive all of you, and then go and preach the gospel. He didn't become Desmond Tutu. He became the president, and he set that evil aside. Now, the consequences and the punishment he exacted from those people was different from what I might do, but he prevented a civil war. But nonetheless, his actions, his leadership, coming out of prison, caused him to be responsible, and he set that evil aside. And apartheid was ended, replaced by a black government, and justice now exists in South Africa in ways that we don't even have in America. I mean, in South Africa, gay people can get married. In Ireland, as of today, they can get married. But in the United States, you've got people in Texas and in Wyoming who take gay people and put them on fences and kill them. I mean, you drag them behind a truck until their heads fall off. So I think Nelson Mandela did a great thing, but that doesn't mean he came out of prison and avoided his responsibility. And that was what I was trying to get to Edward.
Absolutely. Point was, listen, David, do me a favor. We're going to drop the call for 1 minute so I can get Edward back into this call, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so don't worry. I'm going to hang up. Nobody call in. I'm going to call back everybody back into the group, all right? 2 seconds.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, bear with us. I need everybody hang up, please. Please hang up. Hang up the call. There we go. That's what I like to hear. A good. There we go. They're very obedient, my boys. But we're going to be coming straight back very shortly. And who have we got first?
I'm here.
Okay, we've got David,
Satish.
we've got Satish, and we still don't have Edward MPAGI. I've just called him again, and it's still not
No, I
answered.
think they're there. It's just coming. It's showing a little bit slow. That's all.
Okay, well, hopefully they're going to come in because I've called them in. So let's this whole argument, right? Again, that we're on at the moment now. Hi, I take it, Edward, you're back in now. Hi, Edward.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Hold on. This whole part where we're in on the moment now is looking at, right, how we can hold the government, the country that supports that kind of regime, supports that kind of corruption, how we can hold them accountable, not just for what they did to Edward MPAGI, but for what they've done to others, those that Edward is still visiting in jail. How do we get this to stop happening and never happen again? And David made a pertinent point when he talked about the Nelson Mandela issue. Nelson Mandela was in prison for 26 years for the apartheid issue. The world came out against apartheid. Sanctions were put on South Africa. Pressure was brought to bear. Economical pressure was brought to bear, and they were forced to turn that around. But when he came out, he was instrumental in helping to bring down that old regime, and that is the power that Edward MPAGI can have, having spent 18 years on death row, released, having found out that the conviction that he was sentenced for did not happen, the guy was alive and all the rest of it. The world can come behind that. A whole different campaign can be born from this, where other individuals that have been wrongly imprisoned and sentenced to death for crimes they didn't commit or were not even committed can be either set free, and a government, a corrupt government, can never see the possibility or the accessibility to commit this kind of corruption again. Surely that must be our angle for going forward.
Thank you. I'm fighting a lonely battle. So if I can get people like you joining me, speaking it out, that would be wonderful.
You're not fighting a lonely battle. You've got a lot of people behind you.
Absolutely.
You know, there are a lot of people behind you. And what we're saying is, if you was to pick up that baton and run with it, you would see how quickly they would all come and stand behind you. But I do believe, alongside David,
Wonderful. Thank you.
there is a fundamental duty to just stand up and say, you know what, this ain't right, and somebody must pay. I think that's the point you're trying to get to, right, David?
Yes. If anything else, the government has a responsibility to send every policeman and every army member to every corner of Uganda to find Edward's children. He's still missing 2 children.
At the very least.
Where are my children? You disperse them to the far corners of Africa. Find them, and find them now.
And bring them back to me.
Exactly.
At the very least.
Sure.
Edward, are you still searching for your children?
Pardon?
Are you still searching for your children?
I failed to get them.
You failed to get them?
I failed to get them.
Okay, so does that mean that you're not searching anymore?
I speak on radio. I try to speak on radio. I have a Christian lady that I work with. I try to speak about it, but I need to do more. I think I need to do more.
Okay, and so how will that do more commence? Where will you start trying to confront the regime, the organizations, the institution that are able to find out where they might be? Edward?
I'm working with Satish. I'm working with Mr. Satish to see how we can work something out in Uganda.
Okay.
Have you considered writing a letter to President Obama or to Mrs. Obama? You know, she did this famous campaign to find the children in West Africa, and the Boko Haram have kidnapped. And it seems to me you should write a letter and then publish that letter on the White House website to look for your children, because people in America, people in the world will join you in the search for your children taken away in the most grotesque violation of so-called justice recorded from Uganda. This is what you must do. You must use the internet to your advantage. Use the White House website to your advantage. Petition the ambassador of the United States in Kampala to help you. And when that becomes known, and the president is in Kenya later this year, maybe something will happen from it. You don't know. Satish, what do you think of that?
I think anything that can be done to help Edward get his children back, anything that can be done to restore him to the life that he should have had, anything that can be done to correct the criminal justice system of Uganda to make sure that this never happens again, must be done. That is when Edward was referring to the things that he and I are working together. This is my idea of a Truth and Justice Commission, which is essentially look into this case. It is the difference-making case, because there is no doubt about innocence. It's absolutely clear that MPAGI and Fred Masembe are innocent, and that this needs to be corrected. There has to be a form of restitution for both of them. It's obviously too late for Fred Masembe. You cannot bring him back to life. What you can do is provide restitution for his family. They have been robbed of a father, of a brother, of a son, of nephews, uncles, everything within that family. They are entitled to have their name back. They are entitled to be put back into the life that they would have had if this thing had not happened. The government of Uganda certainly owes both MPAGI and Fred Masembe's family that form of restitution. It also owes the people of Uganda a competent criminal justice system that shows once and for all that they have moved on past the corrupt and outrageous system that allowed this to happen. They have an opportunity to be a beacon of justice for the rest of the world, and I urge them to take this opportunity once and for all and correct what is an abomination on the nation of Uganda.
Wow.
Well, I fail to see how that can happen unless you bring a lawsuit in Kampala against the government.
You don't need to. You need a Truth and Justice Commission.
Well, how are you going to get that? You're going to how are you going to do it? Lobby the legislature?
Partly. It is a case of the government of Uganda can order a Truth and Justice Commission because there's an easy way out for it. This government doesn't have to say it was our fault. What it can do, and rightly do, is say that this happened because the previous government of Milton Obote and his functionaries allowed this grave and outrageous injustice to happen, and we are going to find out exactly why it happened, how it happened, and make sure it never happens again. It's not difficult for them to do.
So then why isn't it being done? If it's not that difficult for them to do, then why isn't it being done?
I just answered that. The reason it hasn't happened is because it needs the political will to do it. You can say the same question, and I'm going to ask the same question. Why haven't they done this in the Lynette White inquiry? Why haven't they done this in all 7 of the vindication cases in Britain? Why haven't they done this in over 150 odd cases in the United States where there is no doubt about innocence? You can look all over the world and you must be talking at least 150 to 200 cases where there is absolutely no doubt about innocence because they've either found the real perpetrator or, as in this case, there never was a perpetrator to find. Why
Satish,
wait,
Satish, let me jump in. In the United States, I can't speak for Britain, and I don't speak for the United States, but I will say this. In the United States, I know of no case where a person who was wrongly convicted and put in prison, either on death row or not on death row, was not compensated in the millions of dollars. In fact, we have a case right now pending in New York.
Frank Smith.
Yes. What is the case there?
He died on when he was on death row in Florida. They found the real perpetrator. He is basically insane, and he's almost certainly never going to stand trial, but there is no doubt as to who the real perpetrator was. Frank Smith's family have basically been refused compensation, or they got very low compensation, and there have been many other cases where they have basically refused compensation. I believe it just happened in Louisiana.
Let me say, in the cases
I did 39 years and they didn't give him anything.
There's a case pending right now for, I think, $7 million. There are 5 million, 4 millions. There are some 100,000s. In the southern states, there's no doubt there's less willingness to compensate. But if they appeal to the federal courts, there's other access. But my point is very simple. If I were I'm not being argumentative at all. Forgive me. If I were the president, if I was the president of Uganda, highly unlikely, but were I,
I'll vote for you, David. I'll vote for you.
No, I'm unworthy of that. But let me say this, and somebody came to me and said, Mr. President, I want you to form a Truth and Justice Commission for Uganda. I'll say, why? You say, well, look at Mr. Edward McAbey. I'll say, Mr. McAbey, he appealed for a pardon. He was convicted wrongly. I gave him the pardon. Yes, but he's living in poverty now, and he suffered a lot. Well, he hasn't asked me for anything. Well, but don't you think you should give him something? I say, I can't give him anything. He has to go through the court. If the court says he was wrongly convicted, then I will make the right compensation. But until Mr. McAbey asks me, I can do nothing, and I have done what I can do, which is to pardon the man. Now, have a good day. I see no reason for truth and justice, because I have done the truth, and I have done justice according to the law. Thank you. Have a good day.
Nice try. But what you can say in response to that is the claim for compensation, the claim for aftercare, and the restoration of justice is all going to be part of the Truth and Justice Commission. It is going to be one of the things that is suggested too. They will be asked to compensate. They will be asked to give aftercare to him and to restore the lives.
How can they do this when the victim himself is not asking for it?
He is.
Oh, that's not what I understood in the conversation.
That is what we are doing. This is what we're putting in place, the Truth and Justice Commission.
But why would you not begin with a lawsuit and from that jump up to that next level? You have to have
because you would need to go through the very same system that you are condemning. It would have to be decided by the government, the criminal justice system of Uganda. It would mean a judge would have to decide in their favour. That might not be necessary.
Satish, forgive me.
At least under this system.
Okay, forgive me, maybe I'm naive, but it seems to me that the elected officials of Uganda are people of the establishment and who have turf and who have something to protect and are not. And those very elected officials practically passed a death penalty just for being homosexual and under the influence of the most radical Southern evangelicals from America. Why would they ever agree to a Truth and Justice Commission that would impeach themselves?
Because it doesn't. They can blame the previous government for doing this.
And none of these people were part of that government. None of these people or their families.
That's the whole point. They overthrew that government.
You mean none of these people had any relative, any profit, anything to do with the previous? What, were they all sent out of the country? Did they all die? What?
Right, okay.
They fought a guerrilla war.
Gentlemen, let us remember that we are all on the same side here.
Yeah, we are. It's not. I'm not angry or having an argument with him. I'm just simply saying this is the situation. They have a way. It is going to come down to whether there is the political will to do this or not. Now, it may well be that the Ugandan government does not have the political will to do this, but they need to be put on the spot. They need to be put in a position where the demand is made for a Truth and Justice Commission. It is explained why this is in their interest as well as in the interests of the people of Uganda, and really to some extent in the interests of the people of the world. If they then decide, no, we're not interested, then you start basically criticising them for this. But I mean, we have to look at this in another way as well. We're all ganging up and saying that the system in Uganda is awful. Yes, it was and is. But is ours that much better?
Well, let me ask this question with all due respect. It seems to me, I remember a case I was in when I was in the Army. And a young black man was accused of AWOL, that's absent without authority, without leave. And most of the jury members were officers who were from the South. So the first thing the defense attorney did is tell the jury that he was sure they were racist and they would never vote for a black person to go free. Well, that put them all on the defensive, and the man went free because they were determined to prove that they were not racist. And the case was no longer relevant. What was relevant was that these white officers proved they were not racist. And it seems to me, if I were in Uganda and I was a judge and Mr. MPAGI came before me, knowing the history of the corruption that convicted him, I would be like one of those jurors, bending over backwards to prove that I am not corrupt, and I would give him a fair day, and knowing if I didn't give him a fair trial, for compensation for what he endured, that his attorney, Sashi, or whoever else, would make the biggest public relations out of it in the history of the world. That's how I'm thinking. Now, I'm a practical man, so maybe I'm missing something, and please forgive me if I presume anything. But that's how I would play the game strategically and tactically.
You know, we can go on all day. And trying to get around this. The real truth of the matter is Edward MPAGI suffered an absolutely horrendous miscarriage of justice, one that is absolutely unparalleled in my lifetime and in my knowledge and experience of dealing with injustices. And there's no amount of money compensation or get down on my knees and say sorries that would be able to repay or replace the life that was taken away from him. He lost his wife. He's still missing 2 children. He spent 18 years expecting to die at any moment. Edward MPAGI has chosen to forgive those that put him in that position, and I commend him for that. I would find it difficult not to go forward and try and take it to another level. My other question has to be, who's fighting for the rights and the losses of Fred Mbezi? You know, I mean, who's fighting for his rights? You know, he died 4 years into his sentence on death row. He'll never get to find out that, you know, he didn't deserve to be there in the first place, even though he knew it in his own heart. He never got to taste freedom. But upon his release, Edward MPAGI has come out and is involved himself in an organisation called Dream One World. And I just want to touch on that because we are running out of time. We've got about 15 minutes left, and I do feel the work that is being done by Dream One World is an absolutely amazing piece of work for the work that's been done for the orphan children. So, Edward, do you want to tell us a bit about what you've actually done since you came out of death row? Hi, Ronald.
Hi, SATISH, how are you? This is Ronald Katangole from Uganda.
Hello, Ronald, how are you?
I'm okay, how are you?
We are good. Can you speak closer to the mic? Go on, Ronald, we want to hear about the Dream One World.
Oh yeah, I joined MPAGI, Edward. In 2004, 4 years after his release, and we began working on a project with Dream One World, a non-profit based in USA, working with Catholicism, with the founder and director. When Edward came out, told me, and Kathy, that his children never went to school because he was in prison. Nobody took care of them because they had no school fees, because he was away. So his kids missed school, and they're illiterate, and they're struggling and surviving to earn a living. So I joined Edward to start building a school in our community, a school that is going to take care of children of inmates on death row. The school is going to provide education for them, counseling, and because of stigma, father like son, the kids need a lot of attention so that we can prevent them from probably doing crimes that brought their fathers on death row. So we have so far built some classes, and some kids are coming at school. We are in the process of doing the school dormitory, where kids are going to come and sleep from distant places. So we're making good progress with the support of Dream On World. The website is www.dreamonworld.org. In case you want to look at what Edward is doing with me in Uganda, as far as helping the children of death inmates is concerned. So we'd be happy to have people worldwide to join us, work with the children, and support them and transform their lives. So the only gift I can give back to my friends on death row is to help educate their children. That is what Edward says. That the only gift you can give to those people on death row now is to find a way to educate their children. I'm working with him to realize this, to get this done.
When was Edward released? What year did Edward come out of prison?
He came out of prison in 2000.
So you're gonna have to say that again. We missed that.
On a presidential pardon. He was pardoned by the president.
When was he pardoned?
He was released in 2000. 2000.
In the year 2000. So he's 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years now.
How, if somebody wanted to give donations to Dream One World, how would they go about giving donations and supporting and helping?
Dream One World. DreamOneWorld.org.
So they'd have to go on dreamoneworld.com and they'll be able to donate and get information from there, yeah?
.org. Yeah, DreamOneWorld.org.
Dreamoneworld.org.
www.dreamoneworld.org.
And that's where you...
It is org, not com.
It's org, O-R-G.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So and what? Because I've heard a bit about the school. What sort of donations do you need now? What sort of help do you need now?
We need volunteers who want to come and visit the school and work with the children and share with the children. We need kind hearts who can join us in the building the school and supporting the children with support materials like books or clothes, and we need people to come and have fun with the children and visit the school. Engineers who can be involved in the construction project, people who want to donate online or who want to help us, anything, any support is appreciated.
Okay, and how many children do you guys support and cater for now? How many children are in the school? Hello, how many children are in the school?
We have 50 children now, 50 kids.
Wow.
But the school is going to accommodate 150 kids.
150. So, David.
Yes.
That has to be a great work. That has to be a great work that's come out of the suffering of Edward MPAGI, isn't it not?
Yes, I admire it immensely, and I remember reading something he said when Edward came out. He said that he still remembered the people who had never met him and knew nothing about him coming to give false evidence against him. And perhaps what this program is doing with Roland and Edward is to educate people along the lines of not only true knowledge but wisdom and a sense of moral conduct that will rectify a justice system that gave such a terrible result to an innocent man whose suffering none of us can fully understand.
No.
Wonderful.
Ronald, are you still there?
Yes.
So, do you guys do fundraisers and go around and you know, advertise what you're doing at the school in Uganda? Do you get much help in Uganda for the school?
In Uganda, we get volunteers who want to build. In case we get materials like cement, we get volunteers who want to build. We have community volunteers who want to teach children, such kind of support. But we need materials like cement to build.
Okay. Okay.
You understand?
We understand. Satish, do you want to come in here?
Yeah. Well, I think Edward MPAGI is one of the most remarkable people that I have ever had the privilege of knowing, and the fact that he does so much for other people when he has been through an ordeal which would entitle him to say, I have had enough, I want to live the rest of my life on my own, the way I want to live it, however I want to live it, what's done is done, and he doesn't do that, makes him one of the most remarkable and most decent people it has ever been my privilege to know, and I am very, very grateful to be able to call him a friend.
Oh well, that's
Thank you.
well. I've got to say that in a couple of times that I've actually spoken to him, and in the conversations that we've had through message and through what I've read, what a remarkable man you are, and a testimony to the character that is within you. And my only hope and prayer is that you find your missing children, that you continue to fight the fight, and that you get all the support that is available to support you in trying to achieve your objective in bringing those who perpetrated this evil, wretched thing against you to account. David, do you want to come in here with your last words, mate?
I would like to say, Edward, I have great admiration for you, and I guess we lost him, right?
I think we've just lost him.
Yeah. Well, I would have said to him, I have admiration, but, Kervin, I don't mean to make this religious, but Edward has now chosen a more religious path to take, and he is with the Catholic ministries down there. And I think that God does not put people through test like he went through and then allow them to be survivors, not knowing that the testimony that they could give after such experiences would be very believable and cause compassion and understanding to arise in the very people who could make a very big difference in the world in which we live, and specifically the community in which he lives. And he cannot expect that God would have given him the armor and the weaponry of knowledge and wisdom he has today and not expect him to use it to his fullest extent. And I hope he does so, and he has my support in doing so. And if there's anything I can do to help him unbiasedly, I say I would gladly do it.
You know, when I first read Edward's story, it actually moved me to tears. To think that somebody could actually be subjected to such an unparalleled level of misjustice. Absolutely something that's incomprehensible to the human mind, that you could actually be sentenced to death for a crime that was not even committed in today's world. Is absolutely beyond me. But I just want to thank you guys once again for being with us right here on World Jam Global Radio. I think we've got to the end of the show. It's been an amazing 2 hours. I hope that we've thoroughly... this has not been a show of entertainment. It's been a show of information and sharing an experience with a man who has been through a traumatic experience and has come out the other side to tell the story and is doing good right there in that very same community that have persecuted him and literally sent him to his death. It could only be by the grace of God that he has not passed, he has not died, he has not been executed, he didn't take an ulterior motive. He could have done. So I know many people that have killed themselves right there in that jail because they couldn't wait for the execution. So it's an amazing journey, it's an amazing story, and I think it's one that we can all pour our hearts out and open our hearts to, and think of ways that we can support Edward MPAGI and Dream One World on their journey for helping these young orphan children get some kind of a life in front of them, one that's much better than the one that we have. So I want to thank you again, my good friend and colleague and co-host, Dr. David ROMEI. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Kervin. Thank you very, very much.
That's okay, my friend. I think we're again together next week. I'm sure we are. Anyhow,
Yep.
You need to be here every week. That's what you need to do. You just need to be here every week. You're my co-host. You need to be here every week. That's your position until further notice. And Satish, I just want to thank you again for the introduction to some of the people that you've introduced me to, especially to Edward MPAGI and Ronald Katangole. Two remarkable young men. And I just want to thank you for the work that you've continuously done against all the odds in supporting people like this, miscarriages of justice around the world, and the fact that you happen to be an open vessel for people to turn to who are going through these sorts of difficult circumstances, and you're able to be a mouthpiece and a pointer in the right direction for these individuals. I just want to thank you for being my friend also. So well done, and thank you for being on the show, Satish.
Thank you, Kervin and David. I'd just like to finish off by saying that MPAGI has said, thank you all for the encouragement. I am happy to call you my friends.
Wow. And that's
thank you.
Guys, I'm going to have to cut off now because I've got another DJ waiting to come up and do his show. But all I can say is, once again, I will let you know when the show's up and ready and has been posted. You'll see it as per usual, probably by tomorrow sometime. Might even be tonight if I can get it done. But once again,
super. Let
me just say thank you, and just to say we're out of here.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Clarity. Clarity.
Love traps, setbacks, all can come pick up on the back and stride. Love and devotion, don't come by. If the tracks have lost emotion, let it die. It's going to subside. She stole my heart, but it's just a misdemeanor. You got to get over it. Loved her from the start. What you gonna do? When I think I'm in love, then I catch my girl doing me wrong. It's just enough to set back in the start. Like when you get your first ticket for illegal parking. But don't you know it's no big deal. Take it slow. She's not for real. Let it go. But the new appeal, she's so my. But it's just a misdemeanor. You got to get over it.
This is Clarity.
Don't forget, the book Fitted In by Satish Sekar is available. Please get yourselves a copy as quickly as you can. I'll be probably talking to Satish again in the next couple of weeks, and we can run it again. This is Dr. Feelgood saying, Kervin, Julien saying, I'm out of here.
World Jam Global Radio, this is Clarity.
Love and devotion, don't come by. If the tracks have lost emotion, let it die. It's going to subside. She stole my heart, but it's just a misdemeanor. You got to get over it. Loved her from the start. What you gonna do? When I think I'm in love, then I catch my girl doing me wrong. It's just enough to set back in the start. Like when you get your first ticket for illegal parking. But don't you know it's no big deal. Take it slow. She's not for real. Let it go. But the new appeal, she's so my. But it's just a misdemeanor. You got to get over it. Loved her from the start. Love traps, setbacks, all can come pick up on the back and stride. Love and devotion, don't come by. If the tracks have lost emotion, let it die. It's going to subside. She stole my heart, but
Don't forget, you can join me tomorrow morning for the Wake Up Everybody Sunday Gospel Show. And as for now, you got DJ George